Welcome to an extraordinary journey that transcends time and expectation. A story that will captivate your heart and ignite your curiosity. Imagine a 72-year-old man, once brimming with dreams and vibrant energy, now shadowed by the quiet solitude of loneliness and self-doubt. His days blend into one another in a small, dimly lit room filled with memories that both warm and wound his weary soul. Yet hidden beneath the surface of despair is a secret plan, lovingly orchestrated by his devoted family. A plan so unexpected it promises to shatter his world and rebuild it in the most astonishing way. What if a single, carefully crafted act of love could unlock forgotten memories, spark unforeseen connections, and reveal the true value of a life thought to be fading away? In this tale of resilience and redemption, every moment teeters on the edge of heartbreak and hope, inviting you to explore the delicate balance between loss and renewal. As Roberto embarks on a secret trip that will lead him from the depths of isolation to a reunion with the cherished fragments of his past, you will be drawn into a whirlwind of emotions, each twist and turn designed to remind you that even in our darkest hours, the light of love is never truly extinguished. Are you ready to witness a transformation that defies all odds? If this stirring narrative of rediscovery and the unbreakable power of family touches your heart, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and join us as we dive into this moving story. A story that promises to leave you inspired and believing in the beauty of every life. In the heart of Austin, Texas, a city pulsating with vibrant music, bustling streets, and a kaleidoscope of colorful murals, Roberto Morales exists as a quiet observer of life, tucked away in a modest room high above the urban din. Every morning, as the first light of dawn spills through the thin curtains, Roberto slowly awakens to the city's gentle hum. Yet while the metropolis below bursts into life with its rhythmic cadence of honking cars, lively chatter, and the distant strumming of guitars from a local cafe, Roberto's world remains shrouded in a tender melancholy. At 72, Roberto's once robust frame now carries the graceful marks of time, a body that has weathered countless storms and a mind whose memories have begun to blur at the edges. He is a widower whose heart still aches with the bitter, sweet echoes of a past filled with warmth and love. His late wife, Sophia, remains an ever-present specter in his thoughts. Her laughter, once the melody of their shared days, now lingers like the faint scent of a cherished perfume, long faded. Every item in his small room, from the faded photograph of their wedding day to the well-worn armchair by the window, serves as a silent testament to a love that once illuminated his world. Roberto's room is both a sanctuary and a prison. It is a space filled with relics of better times, old records whose grooves still capture the rhythm of a bygone era, a shelf cluttered with books whose pages hold fragments of forgotten dreams, and a wooden table scarred with the marks of time. The room's solitary window frames a view of the bustling streets of Austin, a constant reminder that life continues unabated outside, even as he remains suspended in his own quiet reverie. Living with his devoted son, Alejandro, and caring daughter-in-law, Mariana, Roberto finds himself surrounded by family yet isolated in spirit. Their home, though filled with the occasional laughter and the soft murmur of daily routines, often leaves him with an overwhelming sense of being an unintentional burden. Alejandro, a man caught between the responsibilities of work and caring for his aging father, offers warm smiles and hurried reassurances that, at times, only deepen Roberto's sense of loneliness. Mariana, ever attentive, ensures that Roberto's physical needs are met, yet her busy schedule and the pressing demands of modern life mean that moments of heartfelt connection are few and far between. In these quiet moments, Roberto's thoughts drift back to a time when life was simpler and the future seemed boundless. He vividly recalls the days spent hand in hand with Sophia, long walks under the canopy of a starlit sky, shared laughter over steaming cups of coffee in a sunlit kitchen, and the silent promise of eternal togetherness. Those memories, tender and bittersweet, are interwoven with every corner of his heart, yet they also serve as a painful reminder of all that has been lost. The bustling city below, with its ceaseless energy and ever-changing scenery, contrasts sharply with the stillness that envelops Roberto's inner world. He often wonders if the vibrant life outside is a metaphor for the opportunities he has missed or the dreams he once held dear. His mind, though clouded by the passage of years, clings desperately to those moments of joy, when hope and love filled every crevice of his being. The distant sounds of children playing in the park, the hum of a street musician tuning his guitar, and even the gentle rustle of leaves in a nearby alley are all triggers that transport him back to an era when the world was filled with endless possibilities. Yet amidst this sea of memories and wistful yearning, there exists a poignant duality. While the external world moves forward with relentless determination, Roberto feels marooned in a time capsule where only the echoes of the past remain. His solitude is not just a product of physical isolation, but a deep-seated internal struggle, a quiet battle between accepting the inevitable decline of age and clinging to the vibrancy of life that once defined him. In these reflective moments, the walls of his small room seem to whisper secrets of old, resonating with the laughter, tears, and unspoken words of a life lived fully and passionately. Each creak of the wooden floorboards, every faint hum of an old record playing in the background, stirs a cascade of memories that blur the lines between joy and sorrow. Roberto's heart, though burdened by loss, beats with a resilient rhythm, a silent testament to the enduring spirit of a man who has loved deeply and endured immeasurable pain. As the morning advances and the city awakens in earnest, Roberto remains seated by the window, his gaze fixed on the horizon. There is an unspoken yearning in his eyes, a longing not just for days gone by, but for a rekindling of the passion and purpose that once fueled his existence. It is in this fragile interplay between memory and reality that the stage is set for an unexpected journey. A journey that promises to unveil hidden layers of his character, to bridge the chasm between a haunting past and an uncertain future, and to challenge the notion that age must inevitably be accompanied by isolation and despair. In the chapters that follow, we will delve deeper into Roberto's internal conflicts and explore the transformative moments that begin to reshape his world. From the secret plans devised by his family to the serendipitous encounters with kindred spirits that offer solace and renewed hope, Roberto's path is one of quiet defiance, a testament to the enduring human spirit that refuses to be defined solely by the ravages of time. For now, the soft glow of dawn casts gentle shadows across Roberto's room, as if embracing him in a tender, silent promise. The bustling energy of Austin outside serves as a counterpoint to the deep, introspective solitude within, setting the stage for a journey that is as much about rediscovering lost dreams as it is about finding new reasons to cherish life. In this delicate balance between past and present, between memory and possibility, lies the first chapter of a story destined to captivate hearts and stir the soul. As the busy rhythms of Austin continued unabated outside, Roberto found himself increasingly imprisoned by a silence that roared inside him. Each day, despite the city's lively pulse and vibrant colors, a heavy, lingering solitude clung to his spirit, a solitude that no amount of familiar relics or distant city sounds could dispel. Every morning, Roberto awoke with a sense of foreboding. The once comforting light that filtered through the thin curtains now seemed to accentuate the emptiness within his small, time-worn room. He sat at the edge of his creaking armchair, staring blankly at the cluttered table before him, its surface marred by scratches and stained with memories of a past too vivid to forget. Photographs of happier times were strewn about. A wedding picture with his late wife, Sophia, a faded snapshot of a sunlit family picnic, even a solitary image of him laughing long ago. Each image, once a token of warmth and love, now whispered reminders of a joy that had faded into the background of his everyday existence. In the quiet hours of dawn as the city began to stir, Roberto's thoughts spiraled into a painful introspection. "What am I doing here?" he would silently ask, his mind echoing with the refrain of self-doubt. The laughter of children playing in distant parks, the soft hum of street musicians tuning their instruments, and even the murmurs of conversation from neighbors, all of these became distant notes in a symphony he could no longer join. Instead, his inner world was filled with the dissonance of loss and regret. Roberto's internal battle was relentless. He felt as though he was fading away, becoming less and less of a presence in the lives of those who once held him dear. Living with his son, Alejandro, and daughter-in-law, Mariana, should have been a source of comfort. Yet the very presence of his family, so wrapped up in their own busy lives, only magnified his isolation. Every hurried smile, every polite greeting seemed to Roberto like a fleeting gesture, an acknowledgement of his existence that nonetheless confirmed his belief that he was nothing more than an inconvenience. Late one evening, as a pale moon cast long shadows across his quiet room, a neighbor's offhand remark echoed in Roberto's mind. He remembered clearly the way the words had cut through the evening air. Old folks like you aren't really wanted around anymore. Those words, uttered with a mix of pity and resignation, reverberated in his soul, intensifying his self-doubt and feeding the notion that his value had diminished with age. The memory of that remark haunted him, turning even the simplest act of living into a struggle against a rising tide of despair. Determined to find some solace amidst the overwhelming loneliness, Roberto began to grapple with the overwhelming need to reclaim a sense of belonging. The idea of stepping out of his familiar confines, a room that had become both a sanctuary and a cell, filled him with both terror and a flicker of hope. The internal dialogue was fierce and contradictory. I must not be forgotten. I must have a purpose. Yet what if I'm too old to find meaning in this relentless march of time? His heart ached with the weight of these questions, each one deepening the chasm between his cherished memories and his dismal present. In a bid to break free from the crushing solitude, Roberto mustered the courage to contact a local community center renowned for its senior citizens club. The decision was not made lightly. It was the result of many sleepless nights spent in the company of his own doubts. With shaking hands, he dialed the number and listened intently to the gentle voice on the other end, who explained the schedule of group meetings filled with storytelling, music, and shared experiences. Despite his fear of rejection and the unfamiliarity of the social scene, Roberto felt an inexplicable pull toward this promise of connection, a hope that perhaps, somewhere among those gathered souls, he might rediscover his own lost spark. The day of his first meeting dawned crisp and clear, a day that promised a tentative step away from the shadows of his isolation. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, Roberto left his apartment. The walk to the community center was long and filled with a cacophony of sensations. The cool morning air that brushed against his weathered skin, the distant chatter of passers-by, and the rhythmic tapping of his own steps echoing on the sidewalk. Each step felt like a small act of rebellion against the solitude that had defined him for so long. Upon arriving, Roberto was greeted by the warm, inviting ambiance of the center. The building, adorned with vibrant murals and blooming flowers in window boxes, radiated a sense of life that starkly contrasted with the loneliness of his own dwelling. Inside, soft music and the gentle murmur of conversation provided an immediate, albeit tentative, comfort. A group of seniors, each bearing their own marks of time and experience, gathered in a cozy room arranged with comfortable chairs and a large table set for tea. The atmosphere was initially cautious, with polite nods and subdued smiles exchanged among the group. However, as the meeting progressed, the carefully guarded walls began to crumble. One by one, the members shared fragments of their lives, a tale of youthful exuberance, of love lost and found, of battles fought and small victories savored. When it was finally Roberto's turn, his voice faltered at first, thick with the rawness of buried pain. But as he began to speak, something remarkable happened. The supportive eyes and nods of his new acquaintances lent him strength, allowing his story to unfold slowly, like a fragile bud blooming in the early light. In that intimate setting, every word Roberto uttered was imbued with the weight of years spent in isolation. He recounted the early days of his marriage with Sophia, describing their shared dreams and the simple joys of a life filled with love and laughter. His voice, at times trembling with emotion, spoke of the loss he endured when that love was snatched away, and of the deep-rooted belief that he had become a burden on those he cared about. Yet as he listened to the gentle murmurs of empathy from those around him, a tentative spark of hope began to kindle inside his heart, a realization that his story, with all its scars and triumphs, held meaning not just for him, but for those willing to listen. After the meeting, as Roberto slowly retraced his steps home, beneath a sky sprinkled with stars, he found himself immersed in a whirlwind of emotions. The familiar loneliness still tugged at the edges of his consciousness, but now it was tempered by the warmth of connection and the promise of new beginnings. Maybe I'm not so invisible after all, he thought, his heart softening at the realization that there were others who understood his silent suffering. That night, as he sat in the solitude of his room, now illuminated by a soft, gentle glow from a bedside lamp, Roberto allowed himself to confront the conflicting emotions that had long been suppressed. The past and the present collided within him, stirring up memories that were both painful and precious. He thought of the times he had spent with Sophia, of the laughter that had once filled the spaces between words, and of the quiet moments when love was enough to fill every gap in the soul. At the same time, he acknowledged the weight of his current loneliness, the crushing isolation that had crept in like a persistent fog, dimming the brightness of his former self. In that long, silent hour, tears welled up in Roberto's eyes, not just tears of sorrow, but also of a profound yearning for renewal. He scribbled down fleeting thoughts in a small, battered notebook, each word a testament to his inner battle. "I am more than this burden," he wrote, the ink trembling on the page. "I have a past rich with love, and perhaps a future yet to be written." These words, simple as they were, marked the beginning of a slow but resolute transformation, a commitment to seek out the remnants of hope that lay scattered amidst the ruins of his solitude. The days that followed brought subtle but significant changes. Roberto began to attend the Senior Citizens Club regularly, each meeting offering small moments of joy, a shared smile, a heartfelt story, a quiet moment of understanding. These gatherings, filled with laughter and gentle camaraderie, served as a counterpoint to the crushing isolation he had long endured. Yet the internal struggle was far from over. At times, the fear of being a burden crept back into his thoughts, as persistent and unwelcome as a bitter wind. In the quiet moments before sleep, he would question whether these connections could ever truly fill the void that had been etched into him over decades of solitude. Despite these lingering doubts, Roberto's journey toward reconnection was well underway. The community center had given him a glimpse of a life where his voice mattered, a life where he was not defined by his aging body or the passage of time, but by the richness of his experiences and the enduring strength of his spirit. As he drifted off to sleep each night, the memory of that first meeting lingered in his mind like a beacon of hope, gently nudging him to embrace the possibility of change. In this delicate interplay between hope and despair, Roberto's internal landscape was gradually transforming. The once overwhelming loneliness began to soften, replaced by the tentative warmth of human connection and the stirring promise of a renewed purpose. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, each small step, each shared laugh, each heartfelt conversation was a stride toward reclaiming the light that had so long been obscured by darkness. That evening, as the orange hues of dusk bled into the quiet streets of Austin, Roberto's solitary world began to tremble with the weight of secrets and unspoken plans. After his first encounter at the community center, he returned home with the gentle warmth of new connections lingering in his heart. Yet as he crossed the threshold of his modest apartment, the silence that greeted him was thicker than ever, laden with both memories and uncertainties. In the dim light of the living room, Roberto sat at a time-worn wooden table whose surface bore the marks of countless years. The soft ticking of an old clock, hanging crookedly on the wall, punctuated the heavy quiet. It was in this very moment that the hushed voices of his family, coming from the adjacent room, began to intrude upon his thoughts. He could barely catch the words through the crack of the door, a discussion between Alejandro, his son, and Mariana, his devoted daughter-in-law. Each syllable weighted with urgency and careful planning. Earlier that day, in a moment of raw vulnerability, Roberto had approached Alejandro with a simple yet heart-wrenching plea. "Papa, please, take me to a nursing home. I don't want to be a burden anymore." The plea had hung in the air like a fragile prayer, only to be met with Alejandro's gentle yet dismissive, "Not now, Papa. We'll talk about it later." That single exchange had been a spark in the darkness, igniting in Roberto a torrent of self-doubt. Every subsequent moment in the house was now tainted by that memory, a vivid reminder that perhaps his existence was seen as nothing more than an inconvenience. As he sat there, his mind replayed that conversation over and over. Outside, the city had already surrendered to the quiet of night. The rhythmic hum of distant traffic, the occasional bark of a stray dog, and the soft whisper of the wind through swaying trees provided an ambient soundtrack to his solitude. But within the walls of his home, the very air felt heavy with an unspoken tension. Unable to shake the disquiet, Roberto retreated to his cramped study, a sanctuary cluttered with relics of his past. The study was a narrow space, lit by a single, flickering lamp that cast long, wavering shadows on stacks of old letters, faded photographs, and a dusty, well-worn diary. He sank into his favorite armchair, its cushions bearing the imprints of years gone by, and allowed his thoughts to wander. In his trembling hands, he unfolded a yellowed letter from Sophia. Her elegant handwriting spoke of love and resilience. Yet now each word only deepened the chasm between what had been and what he had become. The memories of their life together, of laughter shared on sunlit afternoons and quiet evenings, filled with whispered dreams, now stung with the bitter-sweet taste of loss. Meanwhile, in a softly lit corner of the living room, Alejandro and Mariana sat closely with a trusted family friend. The low murmur of their voices was punctuated by occasional smiles and solemn nods. They were not discussing a move to a nursing home, as Roberto had feared. Instead, they were finalizing details for a secret trip, a carefully orchestrated journey meant to lift Roberto's heavy heart and remind him that he was cherished. Mariana's gentle eyes shone with determination as she said, "We can't let him believe he's unwanted. This trip is our way to show him that his life still matters, that he is loved beyond measure." Alejandro, his face shadowed with both guilt and hope, nodded in agreement. They all knew that Roberto's desperate request had been born of deep loneliness and a fear of being cast aside, a fear that had taken root over years of feeling isolated and undervalued. In the solitude of his study, Roberto's thoughts churned like storm-tossed waves. Could it be that they're planning something for me? He wondered bitterly, his heart sinking with every doubt. Or is this just another cruel reminder of how unwanted I've become? The voices from the other room, now mere fragments of sound, mingled with the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant call of a nightbird outside his window. The once comforting ambiance of his home now felt alien, a space where every creak of the wooden floor and every whisper of the wind carried the weight of his insecurities. Unable to contain the swirling emotions, Roberto rose and padded softly toward the living room, careful not to disturb the hushed planning. Standing in the doorway, he strained to catch every snippet of conversation. He heard them mention packing a few essentials, a trip planned just for you, and a chance to see something new to feel loved. The words, though fragmented, sparked an ember of hope amid the darkness of his doubts. Yet they also fanned the flames of his self-deprecation. Am I really worthy of such love? Do they see me as someone who must be hidden away until I'm no longer a burden? In that moment, the walls of the house seemed to close in around him. Every corner of the room, from the patterned rug underfoot to the faded wallpaper peeling at the edges, mirrored his internal decay, a slow, inevitable crumbling wrought by years of neglect and silent suffering. But even as the shadows loomed large, there was a subtle counterpoint, a glimmer of promise that perhaps this secret trip could be a turning point in his life. Later that night, as a gentle rain began to patter against the windowpane, a soothing rhythmic accompaniment to the inner storm, Roberto found himself alone in his room. The soft patter of raindrops provided a transient sense of calm, yet his mind was anything but still. Lying awake in his narrow bed, he clutched a battered notebook to his chest. In the solitude of the darkness, he scribbled tentative lines, capturing the conflict within him. I feel invisible, unwanted, yet a small part of me dares to hope that maybe I am more than this burden. The words trembled on the paper, a fragile declaration against the long-held belief that he had nothing left to offer. As midnight approached, the house settled into an eerie quiet. Outside, the city's lights blurred into a constellation of distant beacons, while inside, the hum of the refrigerator and the soft creaks of the settling structure were the only witnesses to Roberto's inner turmoil. In those long, silent hours, His mind roamed freely through memories of better days. Childhood trips filled with laughter, family vacations where joy was abundant, and simple moments of shared love that now seemed like fragments of a long-forgotten dream. By the time the first hints of dawn began to color the horizon with soft pastel strokes, the household stirred with a cautious energy. Roberto was gently awakened by the tender footsteps of Mariana. Standing at the foot of his bed, her eyes were filled with warmth and quiet resolve. "Papa," she murmured, her voice gentle yet firm, "we're going on a little trip today. I know you've been feeling low, and we thought a change of scenery might help lift your spirits." Her words, simple and sincere, struck Roberto with a mix of relief and trepidation. In that delicate moment, all the weight of his insecurities collided with the prospect of something new. Is this really happening, he wondered, as his mind replayed the voices from the night before. Could this secret trip be the beginning of a healing journey, or is it just another reminder of my fading worth? Reluctantly, yet with a deep-seated need for change, Roberto began to prepare for the trip. He gathered a few treasured items: a worn photograph of Sophia, a small book of poetry that had once been a favorite of theirs, and his notebook filled with the raw, honest fragments of his inner thoughts. As he packed his modest bag, each object seemed to carry the weight of his past, yet also a promise of possibility. Outside, the gentle drizzle had given way to a soft, steady rain, a quiet benediction upon his tentative steps toward an uncertain future. Standing at the doorway, his gaze fell upon the familiar yet sorrowful interior of his home. The gentle glow of the street lamps filtered through the window, casting long shadows that danced across the worn floor. In that moment, Roberto's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The secret trip, conceived in whispers and nurtured by his family's unspoken love, now beckoned him into a realm where hope might yet blossom amid the remnants of loneliness. As he stepped outside, the cool night air embraced him, and the sound of raindrops became a steady rhythm of reassurance. The world beyond his door seemed vast and full of possibilities, a stark contrast to the confines of his solitary existence. And though doubt still whispered in the recesses of his mind, Roberto felt a fragile spark of courage ignite within him. With each step toward the car waiting in the driveway, a car whose headlights cast long beams onto the wet pavement, he wondered if this journey would finally prove that he was more than a burden, that he was deserving of love and connection. Thus, in the quiet pre-dawn hours, with the house behind him still echoing with secret plans and soft voices of care, Roberto embarked on the first leg of a journey that promised to challenge his deepest fears. The rain-washed streets, the gentle murmur of the city, and the tender support of a family who believed in him all conspired to create a moment of transformation. A moment where, perhaps, the shadows of loneliness might finally give way to the soft glow of hope and belonging. The car's headlights sliced through the soft pre-dawn mist, each beam illuminating a fleeting glimpse of the world outside. Roberto sat in the back seat, the rhythmic patter of rain on the windshield merging with the steady hum of the engine. Outside, the urban landscape of Austin had given way to a tapestry of nature: winding country roads lined with dew-kissed grass, ancient oak trees whose gnarled branches reached skyward, and fields that stretched endlessly into a gentle horizon. The cool, damp air carried the fresh scent of earth and rain, mingling with the lingering aroma of pine from nearby forests. Yet inside, Roberto's mind was a tempest of conflicting thoughts and emotions. As the car rolled along the winding road, the first hints of sunrise bled across the sky in muted pastels, soft pinks and gentle golds that seemed to promise renewal. But for Roberto, each ray of light was met with a silent question: am I truly capable of change? His thoughts were a mix of bitter self-doubt and fragile hope. Memories of the past, moments of vibrant joy alongside the deep, gnawing loneliness, swirled like autumn leaves in a turbulent wind. He clutched the small, faded photograph of Sophia in his trembling hand. Her smile, captured in that single moment, was both a comfort and a painful reminder of the life he had lost. In that quiet space between night and day, every mile traveled on this secret journey seemed to echo his own internal odyssey, a struggle between accepting the weight of his solitude and daring to believe that perhaps he was still worthy of love and belonging. After a while, the car slowed as it approached a rustic gas station on the outskirts of a sleepy town. The building, with its weathered wooden siding and a flickering neon sign that read Service and Supplies, stood as a quiet relic of simpler times. The attendant, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and grease-smeared hands, was busy with an old pickup truck in the lot. Alejandro pulled the car over, and Roberto, urged by a mix of restlessness and the need to stretch, stepped out onto the rain-slicked pavement. The gas station's ambient glow created an almost cinematic scene. The gentle hum of conversation from a couple of locals inside, the soft buzz of fluorescent lights, and the rhythmic drip of rain from the awning together formed a subtle symphony of everyday life. As Roberto shuffled toward the service window, a man leaning casually against the pickup truck caught his eye. The stranger, dressed in a neatly pressed shirt with a faded cap pulled low over his brow, wore a look of serene understanding. "Good morning, sir," the man greeted warmly, his voice resonating with genuine kindness. "It's a beautiful day to be out, isn't it?" Roberto paused, his heart pounding with both hesitation and a spark of cautious curiosity. "Yes, it is," he managed, his voice soft as if afraid to disturb the delicate balance of his thoughts. The stranger extended his hand in greeting. "I'm Samuel. Sometimes a friendly chat can ease the burdens we carry. If you don't mind, may I sit with you for a moment?" They found a small bench beneath a flickering street lamp, where the patter of rain and the whisper of wind through nearby trees created a private world away from the mundane. Samuel's eyes were warm, and his presence exuded a quiet wisdom born from years of his own struggles. As they talked, Samuel's gentle inquiries gradually coaxed Roberto into sharing fragments of his story. The loss of Sophia, the persistent ache of loneliness, and the ever-present fear that he had become a burden to those he loved. "Sometimes," Samuel said after a pause filled with the sound of distant thunder, "our worth isn't measured by the weight we think we add to others, but by the moments of love and kindness we share. Life has a way of renewing itself, even when we feel most diminished." Those words, simple yet profoundly sincere, stirred something within Roberto. For a long time his inner dialogue had been dominated by the harsh echo of self-reproach. But here was someone who saw him, not as a fading relic, but as a man whose experiences and memories still had value. The conversation was brief, yet it felt transformative. Samuel's kindness, like a gentle rain on parched soil, began to wash away the layers of doubt and isolation that had accumulated over the years. Rejoining Alejandro and Mariana in the car, Roberto felt a subtle shift in his inner landscape. The journey continued along a narrow winding road that cut through an expanse of golden fields and clusters of wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze. The scenery was breathtaking in its simplicity, a mosaic of nature's resilience and quiet beauty. As the car moved steadily forward, Roberto allowed his eyes to wander across the vast open fields and the horizon that seemed to hold the promise of endless possibilities. Every turn of the road, every subtle change in the landscape, was a silent testament to the world's capacity for renewal. Inside the vehicle, silence settled comfortably between them, punctuated only by the occasional murmured word from Alejandro and Mariana. Roberto's thoughts, however, were far from quiet. They churned with the echoes of the past, the laughter of days long gone, the quiet moments of intimacy that had once defined his relationship with Sophia, and the stark, painful reminders of his isolation. Yet amid the swirling memories there now shone a fragile light of hope. The journey, both literal and metaphorical, was beginning to reshape his perception of himself. The landscape outside, bathed in the soft glow of the morning, seemed to whisper that perhaps his life, too, could be transformed. After several more hours of travel, the car began to slow once again. The road led to a long, tree-lined driveway, bordered by a series of meticulously maintained hedges and flowering shrubs. In the distance, a house emerged, an architectural blend of old-world charm and modern elegance. The structure, painted in soft, inviting hues and adorned with intricate details reminiscent of a bygone era, glowed under the gentle light of the rising sun. It was a vision that both startled and uplifted Roberto, for the house bore an uncanny resemblance to the home he had lost so many years ago, a home that once echoed with the laughter and love of his youth. As the vehicle came to a gentle stop at the end of the driveway, Roberto's heart pounded with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts. The fear of facing yet another disappointment battled with the hope that this secret trip, so carefully planned by his family, might finally affirm his worth. In that moment, every detail, the fresh scent of blooming flowers, the sound of birds chirping in the nearby trees, and the subtle interplay of light and shadow on the newly restored facade, conspired to create a powerful sense of possibility. Alejandro turned to him with a soft smile, his eyes conveying both reassurance and a hint of unspoken apology. Mariana's hand rested gently on his shoulder as she said, "Papa, welcome home." Her words, simple and heartfelt, broke through the layers of doubt that had long shrouded Roberto's heart. In that instant, a flood of emotions surged through him. Tears welled in his eyes, not merely from the weight of years spent feeling unwanted, but from the overwhelming realization that his family had, in their own tender way, always cared for him. The restored house was not just a building, it was a symbol of hope, a tangible manifestation of love that had been quietly nurtured behind the scenes. It spoke of second chances, of memories reborn, and of a future where Roberto was no longer defined by his solitude. Standing at the threshold of this new beginning, Roberto took a tentative step forward. The cool, crisp air filled his lungs as he crossed the driveway, each step echoing the slow reclamation of his self-worth. The home, with its familiar lines and lovingly restored details, beckoned him to enter, not as a forgotten relic of the past, but as a cherished member of a vibrant, living family. The sound of his footsteps on the polished stone, the gentle rustle of leaves in the garden, and the soft murmur of voices from within all combined to create a moment of profound transformation. Inside, the house was a harmonious blend of nostalgia and renewal. The rooms were suffused with a warm glow from carefully placed lamps and the soft, natural light streaming through large windows. Each piece of furniture, each carefully selected artifact, told a story of love, resilience, and the enduring power of family bonds. Roberto's eyes lingered on a framed photograph of him and Sofia on their wedding day, now prominently displayed on a mantel that had been lovingly restored to its former glory. It was as if every detail had been orchestrated to remind him of who he once was and who he still could be. In that transformative moment, as he stood surrounded by the tangible expressions of care and remembrance, Roberto felt the heavy chains of isolation begin to shatter. The secret trip, the unexpected kindness of strangers, and the heartfelt efforts of his family converged into a single, overwhelming revelation. He was not a burden. Instead, he was the cornerstone of a legacy built on love, sacrifice, and the quiet, enduring strength of the human spirit. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the home in a soft, golden light, Roberto allowed himself to be enveloped by the warmth of his renewed surroundings. The echoes of his past, once marred by sorrow and isolation, were now interwoven with the vibrant promise of the future. In that moment, with every detail of his journey etched into his heart, Roberto finally dared to believe that his life, with all its scars and memories, was indeed a precious tapestry of love, resilience, and hope. The car came to a gentle stop at the end of the long, tree-lined driveway, where the soft glow of the morning sun bathed the restored home in a tender, golden light. Roberto's heart pounded as if echoing the rhythm of a long-forgotten melody. In that moment, standing before a house that blended the nostalgic charm of his past with the promise of a renewed future, he felt every fiber of his being tremble with anticipation. The house, its walls lovingly painted in warm hues and adorned with blooming window boxes, seemed to whisper silent reassurances that here he truly belonged. As Alejandro carefully opened the car door and stepped out, Mariana followed with a gentle smile that radiated both affection and quiet determination. "Papa, welcome home," Mariana said, her voice soft but unwavering. The words, simple yet imbued with deep sincerity, resonated in Roberto's chest like a long-awaited embrace. For years he had carried the heavy burden of feeling invisible and unwanted, but now as he gazed upon the lovingly restored facade, a tentative hope began to blossom within him. Roberto stepped from the car slowly, each footfall echoing on the paved path that led to the front door. The morning air was crisp, carrying the delicate fragrance of freshly cut grass and the subtle scent of blooming roses from the garden. The gentle murmur of birdsong in the surrounding oak trees provided a symphony of nature's own making, a quiet reminder that life, in all its myriad forms, continuously renews itself. As he approached the doorway, his eyes were drawn to the intricate details that spoke volumes of the care and thought poured into every corner of the house. The door, crafted from polished wood and adorned with a brass knocker that gleamed in the sunlight, invited him to step inside and rediscover the life he had once known. Roberto's hand hesitated on the doorknob, and for a moment, the memories of a life filled with laughter, warmth, and love mingled with the ghost of sorrow from years past. It was as if the very air around him pulsed with the promise of a new beginning, a chance to reconcile the fragments of his cherished memories with the beauty of a future reimagined. Inside, the house was a haven of both nostalgia and modern comfort. The interior had been lovingly restored to echo the elegant simplicity of his childhood home, yet with thoughtful touches that spoke of progress and renewal. Soft, ambient light filtered through large windows, casting gentle shadows on polished wooden floors. Each room was a curated blend of the past and the present, a living area adorned with family photographs and heirlooms, a kitchen that still carried the faint aroma of Sophia's favorite recipes, and a cozy study where Roberto had once penned letters filled with dreams and love. In the living room, a large portrait of Roberto and Sofia on their wedding day dominated the mantel, her eyes forever captured in a smile of quiet joy. As he gazed at the photograph, tears welled in his eyes, tears of remembrance, of longing, and finally of relief. For so long, he had harbored the painful belief that he was a burden, that his presence was a constant reminder of loss. Now, as he absorbed the loving details of his homecoming, those old wounds began to mend. The warm glow of the room, the carefully placed mementos, and the gentle hum of familial voices seemed to say, "You are cherished. You are irreplaceable." Alejandro approached Roberto with an outstretched hand, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and heartfelt apology. "Papa, we never wanted you to feel alone," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "This home, this trip, it's all for you. You are the foundation of our family. We rebuilt this not just with bricks and mortar, but with every ounce of love we have for you." Mariana stepped forward, placing her hand on Roberto's shoulder. "We wanted you to see that your life, your memories, and your love continue to build the future. You deserve a place where every detail reminds you of the beauty you've given to all of us." In that moment, surrounded by the tangible expressions of their devotion, Roberto felt a warmth that transcended the physical space. The accumulated weight of years filled with self-doubt and isolation began to lift, replaced by a profound sense of belonging. The once piercing loneliness that had so defined his days was now softened by the realization that he was not alone, that his family, his community, and even the gentle embrace of the world outside recognized his intrinsic worth. Outside, the gentle clatter of a familiar sound drew Roberto's gaze toward the garden. There, standing regally beside a newly erected wooden post, was Palomo, his beloved horse whose steadfast companionship had marked so many of his younger days. Palomo's coat shimmered in the soft morning light, and as the animal let out a gentle whinny, it was as if the echoes of past and present converged into a single, harmonious note. Overcome with emotion, Roberto made his way to the stable. As he stroked Palomo's smooth mane, he whispered words of gratitude, a silent thank you for a lifetime of shared journeys and unspoken understanding. In the horse's calm eyes, Roberto saw reflected not only the man he once was, but the promise of what he could still be. The reunion was more than a physical return to a home. It was a soulful reclamation of identity. Every carefully restored corner, every lovingly chosen piece of decor, echoed a message that life's true worth lies in the love we share, the memories we cherish, and the bonds that endure even in the face of adversity. The secret trip, born of his family's tender concern and his own buried yearning for validation, had reached its crescendo in this singular, transformative moment. Later that day, as the restored home filled with the gentle buzz of shared stories and laughter, Roberto sat quietly in a comfortable armchair by a large window. The view stretched out over a garden alive with color and life, while soft melodies played in the background, a curated playlist of songs that carried echoes of happier times. In this sanctuary of light and love, Roberto allowed himself to fully embrace the possibility that he was, in fact, not a burden, but a vital part of a legacy built on love and resilience. Surrounded by family and the renewed spirit of a home reborn, Roberto's heart finally began to thaw. Every detail of his journey, the lonely nights, the whispered doubts, the serendipitous kindness of strangers, and the tender planning of his loved ones, had led him to this moment of reckoning and rebirth. The vivid interplay of past and present, the tangible reminders of a life once lived and a future yet to be crafted, all converged to forge a path toward healing and hope. As the afternoon light waned and the soft hues of dusk settled over the home, Roberto looked around at the faces of those gathered, a tapestry of emotions woven from tears, smiles, and unspoken promises. In that shared silence, he understood that the true measure of a life was not in its final chapters, but in the moments of profound connection that lingered long after the echoes of loneliness had faded. His home, rebuilt with care and bathed in the radiance of renewed hope, stood as a living testament to the enduring strength of love, a love that had, against all odds, brought him back from the precipice of despair. In that delicate balance of memory and possibility, Roberto finally allowed himself to believe that his story was far from over. It was a story of transformation, of embracing one's worth in the face of relentless solitude, and of finding that, even in the quietest corners of a battered heart, there is always room for renewal and light. Roberto's journey teaches us that, no matter how deeply loneliness or self-doubt may weigh on us, our true value is not defined by our perceived burdens, but by the genuine love we share and receive. His transformation, from feeling invisible and unwanted to experiencing the warmth of family and community, reminds us of several key lessons. Intrinsic value. Every life holds inherent worth, regardless of age or circumstance. Roberto's story shows that self-worth isn't diminished by time or hardship, but can be rediscovered through empathy and care. Healing through connection. Genuine, heartfelt connections with family, friends, and even kind strangers have the power to heal deep emotional wounds and restore hope. Renewal is always possible. No matter how dark our moments may seem, there's always a path to renewal. Embracing change, even when it feels daunting, can lead to profound personal transformation. Love is a catalyst. The consistent caring gestures from Roberto's loved ones demonstrate that love is not just a comfort, but a transformative force that can rebuild our spirit and remind us that we matter. In essence, this story is a testament to the idea that when we allow ourselves to be seen and supported, even the heaviest burdens can be lightened, paving the way for a life filled with renewed hope and belonging.